ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome. It's lovely to see you. Today is our bonus session with Manuela Mishki Reeds. It's somatic and trauma informed mentoring, and it's good to be with you one last time. Before we get started in this session, just wanted to give a couple final program announcements. So, first, you may have seen this in the email that went out last week. We'll send another email around completing your course completion form by the end of this month, so by January 31st. This is really important step because this allows us to put your correct and preferred name on your certificate. So please do not forget to do this. Very important. And you can find this form. It's located in the course completion, additional resources, and feedback session on the final module. And then secondly, a video is worth a million words, right? They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. A video is worth a million words. If you could please record and send us a testimonial about your experience in the program, we would love to hear from you. It really helps with our marketing efforts and us spread the word of this program. So with this session agenda today, it'll be familiar, but a little bit of a longer time for us today. So we have 2 hours with Manuela. We'll go over some content and we'll have 35 minutes for breakout rooms or so, and then some Q&A and just general logistics. As you have questions throughout the session, you can send them directly to Manuela and I, and we will cover those at the end of the session. Or, even Manuela has said, if it's really important, we'll go ahead and cover it in the middle of the session to understanding as well. So with that, it's my great pleasure to introduce our guest speaker today. Manuela Mishki Reeds is a somatic trauma psychotherapist, a Dharma practitioner, and a mindfulness teacher, and an international Hakomi trainer, founder of EmbodyWise, and the author of 8 Keys of Mindfulness and other books. Manuela is a global voice in somatic and trauma psychology. She trains professionals in mindfulness-based somatic therapy, trauma integration, leadership development, continuum, and psychedelic-assisted therapy integration. Her work weaves together neurobiology, somatic nervous system practices, and contemplative wisdom traditions to support therapists and mindfulness leaders in cultivating resilience, presence, and embodied compassion. So with that, it's my great pleasure to welcome Manuela. Thank you, Manuela, for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Mackie. I gave you something to contemplate, eh? So welcome. And thank you for having me here as your caboose at the end of your training, as your bonus. Thanks for hanging in. You've been through a rich program. So it's an honor to be giving you this extra little teachings for 2 hours. So I'll give you an overview in a minute, but I just want to acknowledge that I'm calling you in the evening hours. I'm in Europe right now, calling you from Spain, Barcelona, Spain. Any Europeans there? Hello. And perhaps you can also put in where you're calling in from so that we get connected. You all have been connected, but I haven't been connected with you. So if you could just put, yes, there you go, Germany, my home country. Beautiful. Hola, Portugal. Wonderful. All over. Okay, and Bay Area. So I'm between the Bay Area, California, and Spain. So wonderful. That gives me a good feeling. That's good. And as you're putting your location in, your physical location, thank you for that. Keep it coming. Please also put in your emotion location. Like, how are you doing today? How are you coming in? And you can be anything from chill to, oh my God, whatever, scattered. Yeah. Heavy, distracted, sunny, healing, tired, terrified. What's going on? Yeah. Calm on the edge, pregnant, excited. Yeah. Yeah. Feeling the insane stress that's going on, especially in the United States. So I just want to acknowledge that. I figured that would come up. Sleepy, 10:30. Yeah. Okay. Curious, rested. Okay. So we have the whole human spectrum here. That's good. So from anxiety to scared to feeling rested, relaxed, ready, and curious, to the whole human experience. Wonderful. Very appropriate. Thank you for giving me a temperature read. That helps me as well to land. And of course, we have a lot going on in the world and in the United States, but also everywhere in the world, right? You look at any corner, there's a lot going on in any kind of culture right now. So this is perhaps a very timely topic. My work has been in the field of trauma. I won't give you the whole CV here, but I've been both personally a long-term meditator and for over 30 years, and at the same time been a psychotherapist, somatic psychotherapist, and working with trauma. And I literally have worked with a very, very wide range of clients and also groups, from political torture, sexual abuse, physical violence, first responders, you name it, collective trauma situations. So I've worked with a whole range, and then do a lot of trainings around the world on these topics. So it's very beautiful that I got invited here into your class and talk about your role as leaders, as mentors, and having a trauma-informed lens. And that's really what we're going to talk about, the somatic and trauma-informed lens into mentoring. And some tips perhaps, and some frame, and also common language that I can download to you. We could be spending many hours on this, so I try to kind of highlight and cherry pick what I think is important. Parts of it, if you're not familiar with this terrain, some of you here are therapists and social workers and medical professionals. You might know some of what I'm talking about. And for some of you, this might be new or newish. So I'm going to definitely sprinkle in some common languaging so we have a reference point together. And I also, after the class, you will receive the PowerPoint that I'm going to go through. So some of these slides are a little bit dense, so then you can go back and you read it again, so you have it for your reference, okay? The very topic of trauma is in itself, it's a big topic, it's a triggering topic. And so I'd like you to, have your waters, have your cats and your dogs, get up if you need to. So feel free to regulate. I'm going to talk a lot about regulation. So feel free to regulate yourself. That's what it's all about. So we're going to talk a little bit about, how trauma lives in the body, how, you're doing important work, especially right now, bringing mindfulness into the world. And in your role as leaders, bringing into probably a very diverse group of people and continents, as we're seeing here, having some knowledge around somatic and trauma-informed view is very critical. Because of the diversity of students that you're probably encountering and the time that we live in, we cannot escape that trauma is pretty much around every corner right now. So because mindfulness is so helpful, it's also important to know when it's not. And trauma is one of those moments when sometimes mindfulness and trauma are at odds at each other. So I'm going to talk about that. And that's why I'm here. Okay. So as Maki said, if you have questions, I do pretty good with, occasionally getting stopped. If you're having questions that are piling up with Maki, she'll stop me. Otherwise, I'll just gonna go through it. I heard that you're a very attentive group. I wouldn't expect anything else from a mindfulness mentor group. But if something is really burning for you, I do well with being interrupted, okay? Or I'll say, hang on, I'm getting to it. So I'm good with that. All right. So what I'm gonna do though, I'm gonna show you my slides, and I'm probably coming in and out of them. Okay, so here we are. That's the presentation. And what we're going to start with is a somatic awareness practice. I'm going to guide you through a practice I call the back body practice. And then we're going to talk about, and there's a lot under there, the role of the body in trauma and mindfulness, and then some core skills. I'm going to talk about what it means to be an embodied mentor. What does that mean? Because that's really what the key is. We want to offer embodiment techniques that are safe and sound for our trauma students and clients. And then we're going to do a skill practice so that you're walking away with something that you can use with your students. And then obviously a Q&A practice. So, what I want to guide you through in a moment is this back body practice, which are also called the three centers of awareness. And it's working with three centers of awareness, which I'm sure you're completely familiar with: the front of the body, the center of the body, and the back of the body. So, like an Oreo cookie, for those of you in the Americas, that cookie. Those of you in Europe, don't bother. It's a terrible cookie, full of sugar. But it's basically, we have the front of the body that faces the front of the world. We have the center axis, which traditionally in some Buddhist traditions are referred to as the central channel, in which we're going to drop the breath. And then we have the physical back of the body, in which we're going to lean into for support. Okay, so I'm going to talk you through it, but just that you know where we're heading. So what I'd like to do is I'll play a piece of music just as background, just for ambiance. And what I'd like you to do is get yourself ready into your preferred meditation posture. And if you need to be reclining, I mean, I don't want you to go to sleep, obviously, but if you need to kind of shift your reference point somehow to reclining a little bit, or you need to swivel away from the screen, please do so, because you're going to be on screen for a while. So this is a good chance for you to close your eyes or cast them down. And this is a time for us to drop in. And as you're dropping in, which I'm sure you have done many, many times in this class, just notice how you greet yourself and greet your body in particular. Is there friendliness towards your body, a hello, or is there like a let's go and work attitude? Like, how do you even greet yourself coming in to your present moment body experience? Just notice that. As you're greeting yourself, see if you can bring loving kindness, curiosity, an invitation into the body, like an old friend. And notice how your body responds, perhaps by relaxing shoulders, the face. Perhaps you're unclenching a little bit in the belly. Welcoming yourself into your body. And then we're going to invite the front of your body first. And just pay attention to your face. Is there any kind of tension or holding? This is how we greet the world. This is how we greet our students. And notice if there's any kind of holding, and breathing into that and letting it go. Just dropping it a little bit. And traveling the front of the body to the throat and the chest. Again, noticing any kind of holding, bracing, heaviness. Breathing into it and gently easing it. You're just asking the body to make way just a bit. Continuing to the top of the belly, the solar plexus area, the roundness of your front belly. Letting the breath invite the whole belly area. Again, noticing any subtle holding and easing it. And then including in the next sweep of your awareness the tops of your arms, the tops of your legs, the back of your hand, tops of your feet, the whole front of the body as it meets the world. And notice how tired it is, or excited, or anxious, or scared, all the things you mentioned earlier. And then allowing that to soften ever so gently. Notice that aspiration that you probably have to wanting to meet with a friendliness and a kindness, with an invitation. So you're letting the whole front body becoming a little bit permeable right now. Allow that to be there. Permeable and soft. And if you need to exhale as you do that, then go ahead and do that. Perhaps with a sound or a sigh. And then holding that awareness, the soft front body, we're going to shift now to the central channel, the center axis of your body. It runs from the crown of the head all the way to the pelvic floor, the perineum. In front of the inner spine, there's an open energetic space called the central channel. And if you can either sense it or visualize it, about the width of your thumb, it's an empty, spacious column or channel. Very gently now, drop in your breath. You don't have to get technical, just simply drop in your breath and let the breath ride up and down the central channel. As you breathe in from the pelvis, from the earth, all the way to the crown, to the sky. As you exhale, you're letting the breath travel down from the crown to the pelvic floor. If you need to take several breaths doing it, that's totally fine. You find your rhythm. Breath in the center of your body, traveling like a standing wave. So as you're breathing in, taking your time, letting that wave-like breath crest at the top of your crown, making a U-turn, and then traveling with the exhale softly all the way down through the body to the pelvic floor where it takes another U-turn. So find a rhythm that feels just right, letting the breath travel in this beautiful flow that's your breath flow. And then becoming aware that this breath flow in the center of your body is together with the front permeable soft body meeting the world. So you're open to the world and fluid in the center of your being. Feel that for a moment. soft front body, fluid center. One breath at a time. And then we're focusing on the third place of awareness. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to do a very small shift in your body, as if you're sitting back and physically into the back of your body, like a comfortable sofa. Just a millimeter, just shifting back. So you're engaging the back of your body ever so slightly with a gentle alertness but relaxation. So the back of the body is engaged but relaxed. You can feel the back of your neck, the tops of your shoulders, the strong muscles alongside the spine holding you up in gravity. The buttocks muscles holding your seat, tethering you to earth. And feel now the skin of your back reaching backwards, leaning into your practices, your teachers, your traditions, your lineages, perhaps your land, and the ancestors that are supportive to you. You are fully backed up. Feel that. You have support. Feel the strength of your back leaning into all that support. Held between the sky and the earth. You are fully supported. And now bring in the awareness of the fluid center, the breath that travels like the wave in the center, the soft, permeable front that meets the world with vulnerability and compassion, and the strong back that's supported by teachings and teachers and lineage. Blend them into one awareness. Soft, open, permeable, fluid, capable of metabolizing, and supported and strong. Feel all those qualities into one presence. And notice what becomes available inside of you as you sit in this strong, fluid, open, permeable back body of your being. From this place, how do you meet the suffering of the world, an individual, a group, a friend, a family? How do you meet it with all these qualities together? What's available inside of you? And taking one more breath. And begin to close your practice. If you like to do a dedication of your practice, go ahead and do that internally. Thank you for your practice. And as you're shifting and opening your eyes, just notice for a moment how your physical presence, as you're engaging into Zoomville, how you're sensing and feeling your physical body, and how is your nervous system? How are you doing? And whatever words feel good to put in the chat, you're welcome to do that. I know this is a lot of ask to do that right away. Take your time. If you want, you can. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm. Good. Fluid. Liquid. Calm, grounded, centered. Yeah. Good. Aware. Beautiful. Sorry to have put down the Oreo cookies. We have fans here. Yeah, in balance, held, beautiful, in flow. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very different list than when we started, huh? Like, where the world? So it's so beautiful that our nervous system has this capacity to arrive here in its completeness, right? So the world is still the same 15 minutes ago, and yet our reference point is shifted. And a big piece of working with trauma is not just centered and calm and peaceful, but the key aspect is fluid. So that breath that I guided you into the central channel, some of you might be familiar with some of these teachings of the central channel, but the fluid is really key because the fluid is the capacity to metabolize stress and trauma. Because when we're centered and connected, that's a piece of the Oreo cookie. If we're too open and too permeable, we get overloaded and flooded and dissociated, yes. If we're too much in our strength, we might get a little tight in the front, maybe blocked off. Yeah. So we need all three centers of awareness. And in particular, we need the fluid part because the fluidity is both the bridge and the great metabolizer of anything that ripples through our nervous system. When we are connected with fluid breath, we can deal with whatever stress is coming. We're actually fully equipped to deal with stress and trauma. We are built for it. But we need to do a few things. But we are equipped to deal with it, not just survive it. And so I hope that's the take home bumper sticker because trauma is often like, oh my God, trauma, overwhelming. And that's true. And that's one reference point. And the other reference point is yes, overwhelming trauma. And I have the choice and the capacity to locate myself into these three centers of awareness. So just as a place, this is called the back body practice. And if you want it, I can send you later the protocol if that jives with you. I have it written out. I'd be happy to. Okay. Yeah, I figured. So I wrote it up for you guys. Okay, good. All right. So feel free to come to this back body practice anytime throughout the talk. And thanks for the love. And also I hope this is a practice that grows with you. All the elements you're probably very familiar with. I've just put them together. They come from very rich traditions. The central channel comes from Vajrayana traditions and Taoist traditions. I didn't make this up. I just liberally borrowed from many traditions. Yeah. So, okay. So I'm gonna put some slides up. Okay. All right. So, sorry, I'm navigating a finicky screen. There we go. So we're going to talk a little bit about the role of the body in trauma and mindfulness and why trauma-informed and trauma-sensitive matters in mindfulness practice. I'm also going to talk briefly about the neurobiology of safety and threat from a polyvagal perspective. And if that's all new to you, I'll reference this, don't worry about it. And then I'm also going to talk about the understanding of trauma with meditators, the prevalence, and common trauma responses with mindfulness, and then also how trauma shapes somatic awareness and attention. That's part one. And in part two, I'm going to give you a couple of lists of like what to look out for. And again, you have all this written, you have this talk, so don't worry. If you don't feel like you want to scribble along and just chillax and just take it in, please do. Okay. And, you know, as I said, I'm a meditator myself, and I've been meditating for over 30 years and also been working with trauma all this time as well. And I noticed it when I would go on retreat. I'd be often the person, the therapist, that would spot the person that would have a trauma activation pretty soon on the cushion, often right in front of me. Yeah, because I'm a somatic, I'm a body-based therapist, so I would be tracking for the nervous system cues. And I would also see in my clients, they would do these wonderful retreats and weekend workshops, and then they would come back and their symptoms would be worse. So there's something about the core that I noticed just anecdotally in my practice with my students, that sometimes intensive meditation experiences had an adverse effect. And some of the instructions that were given were not trauma informed. Now, this is also a long time ago. The world has moved on, and trauma understanding has grown and has been used. So many teachers are incorporating this kind of knowledge. But it's really important to become aware of that, because many, to put it blunt, many, especially novice meditators or mindfulness students, or groups or clients, they come in thinking, oh, this is good, because everybody now prescribes mindfulness as the go-to all. But then they come back and feeling very triggered, and they don't know why, and they consider themselves a bad meditator. I can't do it. My mind is racing. I can't sleep. And inadvertently, it's actually triggering the trauma responses. Yeah? So being aware of what that is and what that does and how to look for it is really what we're going to talk about. There's a slight difference in terms of semantics, trauma-informed versus trauma-sensitive. So trauma-informed is really a systemic framework. So when we're trauma-informed, and I'm going to be using it obviously here in the talk, trauma-informed, trauma-sensitive, but this is just a nuance here. But we're talking about trauma-informed, we're really understanding how the nervous system is impacted, what behaviors and responses can happen when trauma happens, what happens to relationships, what kind of meanings and beliefs arise when trauma happens, because trauma really impacts every kind of aspect of the person, and it changes what we believe about the world, right? It's hard, you all mentioned it already, and I'm going to be very US centric, sorry, everybody else in the world right now, but what's happening right now in the US, for example, our beliefs are being shifted as we're experiencing it, right? We're all going to have this like, the world is not a safe place. That's a belief. Yeah? So when we're experiencing trauma, our meaning levels are getting updated, are getting changed, and our beliefs are getting changed. So it's also to understand that trauma is not just an individual experience. The way I view trauma, it's the individual, it's the historic, it's the collective, it's the systemic, and they're all intersecting. So trauma is not just an individual phenomena, it's also trauma intersects into the collective, historic, systemic. That's in the familiar, intergenerational as well. So it's really important to understand that, because often people think, I'm going to say clients because I'm so used as a psychotherapist to reference clients. So client, student, please exchange that word for your situation. But I see often in clients that they blame themselves for their trauma, and they're not really looking at, wait a minute, you grew up at a particular time under a particular oppressive system, under certain conditions. Anybody would be traumatized, right? If we be in Minneapolis right now experiencing this firsthand, we all be traumatized. So the context, the time, the resources, the lack of it, all these come into play when we're talking about trauma. So that's really important to understand. Trauma sensitive is also the moment to moment response. So this is where we are, this is a relation application. So I am being trauma sensitive to a person. So I'm practicing attuned listening. We're going to talk about all this. Safety, empathy, right? I'm adjusting my responses to noticing that somebody goes into a trauma response. That's me being trauma sensitive. So I'm adopting my responses on my teaching as a mentor, perhaps, to what I'm perceiving in my student or my client in front of me. So just a little bit of a terminology here. And in general, when we're looking at a trauma person, we don't usually say what happened to you or what's wrong with you. We say, what's your experience? Trauma is highly subjective. If we be in a Minneapolis right now, we probably have all kinds of different experiences. Some of us feel maybe very resolute and go into fight response. Somebody else who goes into freeze response, somebody else into flight response. It has a lot to do with our nervous system, the perceived threat, and the resources that are available or are within. So we don't usually ask what happens or what's wrong with you or any of those. Those are injurious, right? We ask like, what's your experience? Tell me about your experience. And that opens up a much wider lens. That's already a trauma sensitive kind of engagement with somebody. And then I'm listening to what is being told and how it's being told. So if I see somebody that's spacing out, that's withdrawing, or their eyes are darting, or they're starting to sweat, or they're trailing off in their words, or things like that, I'm already detecting the signs of a nervous system going into stress. And so I need to adapt. And that's the adjusting in real time. So being trauma sensitive means I'm adjusting my responses, my instructions as a mentor to what's happening in the moment to moment unfolding in this conversation with a student or client. So trauma sensitive is being attuned and responsive to the potential presence of trauma in the moment. Yeah? That's being trauma sensitive. We live in a time, I used to say that I teach trauma for a long time now. And I used to say not everybody's traumatized, but I think I'm revising that statement. I still don't think that everybody's traumatized, but we all have the capacity to be traumatized for the moments, but how we process it and if we have trauma symptoms really depends on a variety of factors. But there is the potential for all of us to have trauma responses. Yeah. And so being sensitive that the trauma could be, that we could be in the presence of trauma or could activate it, that is already being trauma informed and trauma sensitive. So what we want to do is we want to stay attuned to what we call, I come from Hakomi, we call them indicators, indicators of overwhelm. So overwhelm are big indicators of the nervous system. I cannot process. Trauma, and here's a bumper sticker for you. Trauma in the short form is it's too much, too early, too soon, too much, too fast. Yeah, it's all basically too much. And I cannot process. So I cannot process what's happening. I can't comprehend. I can't digest it. And we literally cannot in our nervous system. And that's why we need to use the more primitive parts of our nervous system to deal with what's occurring, which often means either fighting, fleeing, but the last resort often is freeze, shut down, which we call the immobility response. Okay. So I need to be attuning to, there could be these indicators in somebody. They're very physical, they're somatic, of somebody shutting down. And so my responses need to be very relational in that moment rather than explaining. What we do when we notice somebody is anxious or they're withdrawing, what is the tendency? We try to double down on our instructions. Have you noticed that? As if the person is not clear of what we're saying. And we go like, let me explain it to you again. Let me go over the exercise or the instructions. Their prefrontal cortex is actually not available to receive those instructions. They have now gone into the amygdala response, the much more primitive parts of the nervous system, and they're going like, how can I get out of it? This feels all threatening. And so explaining anything won't work. So what we need to do is much more modify, become trauma sensitive, our pacing, our focus, and our language. It's usually simpler, slowing down, becoming soft, and go like, what's happening for you right now? Yeah? Becoming relational. So drop my agenda of my instruction or whatever I want to kind of do and go like, what's happening for you right now? I'm noticing something is not landing. And then the client goes or the student goes, I'm not sure. It's all confusing. I don't get it. Yeah. And that's what I mean by the confusing. We often double down on the explanation rather than like, so let's just see if I can be helpful. Do you need more information? Do you need a little bit of time right now? Let's see what you need. That's a trauma sensitive intervention. Rather than assuming, oh, you don't know what the instruction is, let me double down. Do you see the difference? Because when you do the explanation, what happens is the person goes, oh my God, I'm so stupid. I didn't get it. I can't hear her or him. And now it's very loud in my ears. And what's happening is the trauma responses are actually going up. And the person has to go even more. And now you have more and more adverse reactions. And this is where you can have students storming out of the room, really shutting down, getting aggressive, you name it, right? Because the person's at such a high threshold of not being able to digest the experience. So what we do when we're trauma sensitive is we're using choice. What would you like to do? Does this feel right to you? Yeah. Would you like to pause right here? Would you like to take a break? Choice, 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 choice. Why? Because trauma, here's another bumper sticker. Trauma is actually the experience of not having a choice, especially relational trauma. So when you say, hey, we can pause, we can take a break, this was plenty, right? Then that gives a choice. And if they say, oh, I'm not quite sure, I go, okay, you don't know, that's fine. You know what? Let's just take a break. Very easy, right? Does that sound good to you? Again, choice, 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 choice. So you're building it in. And that signals, I'm not overpowering you. I'm not pushing you. I'm not going to put an agenda on you. I'm not coercing you anyway, because the person who's already activated in the trauma will have all those experiences. Yeah? And then all they can do is just defend or shut down. So relational presence and then titration, which is a terminology out of chemistry that Peter Levine from somatic experiencing made very popular. It basically means bite-sizing, one piece at a time, small pieces, bite-sizing. In Hakomi, we call it bite-sizing, small pieces. Hey, how about we start with this? Great. You could just take that breath, or that was wonderful how you did, right? So something positive, something doable, something successful, the lowest bar that there's success. As soon as you have that, the prefrontal cortex actually comes back on and goes, oh yeah, I did get that. Oh, a lot of clarity. See, you got it. Would you like one more, or is this enough? No, this is enough. Good choice, right? Again, choice. That in itself, if you did just that, you'd be superbly trauma sensitive. Yeah. So it means that you want to be tuned in to what's going on. And the goal is really to keep the student safe and regulated. As soon as I see, student, client, whatever, in front of me getting activated, I literally switch into the back body practice. That's why I taught you this one. So I see somebody's nervous system upregulating, we'll call it, or downregulating. I'll talk about that in a second. I see them getting activated. I will resource myself very quickly. And this is where all your practice, this training that you've just had, is going to come in so handy. Use any of the practices that you've been taught. You don't have to use the one I taught you just now, but if there's any practice that helps you to get grounded fast. Because what you want to do in the presence of somebody getting up or down regulated is get centered, but fluid centered. Yeah, not rigid centered, fluid centered. Because you need to make choices, you need to adapt. You might have to throw out your entire plan that you just had, and you have to think on your feet. So that's why the fluid part is also important. But grounding yourself and not going with an up or down regulated student or client is really, really important. So keeping your nervous system regulated is a huge part of this work. So here a little bit of polyvagal perspective. I don't go too much into it. There's tons of information. The source is really Stephen Porges, who has popularized the polyvagal theory. This is widely adopted now in the trauma world, especially in the somatic trauma world. But basically, this corresponds with our nervous system. And he coined a term called neuroception. It's a really nice, he made it up. But basically, he took it from some research with infants, that young children, when they are looking in learning to relate to, usually around 9, 10 months, relating to their environment, they are picking up social cues and they're looking for safety and danger. And it's purely somatic. And when they're seeing signs of hostility or threat, they will actually have fight, flight, freeze responses. Okay. They don't want to go to this person. They don't want to be handed off. They're going, no, I don't want to, right? They start crying. They're getting fussy. They're shutting down. They're withdrawing. They're dissociating. So the body's actually responding to threat signals in the environment. And that's what neuroception is. So as human beings, and I always say that we think we're the cool jaguar, but we're actually much more squirrel, because we're constantly looking for, like, am I safe? Am I connected? Do I have a place? Do I belong? Right? We're much more like what's that little character of Ice Age, like that little thing with a nut. We're much more like that, because as human beings, we need to know that we're safe, that we're connected, and that we belong. It's such a human basic need. If we have that, then we can thrive and we can be in safety and connection. And that's the ventral vagal system. So when we're safe and connected, we're abundant, we're altruistic, we're generous, we're doing all those. It's called the social engagement system. Stephen Porges called it. That's when we're safe. When we're not feeling safe, when our neuroception says, oh gosh, there is a threat somewhere, and the threat can be interoceptive from the inside, from past trauma, or exteroceptive from the outer world. Yeah? Somebody coming at you relationally, a group pressure, a physical danger, you name it. Anything that you perceive, this nervous system perceives as a threat, will send us into either a mobilization or an immobilization response. So mobilization is the fight and flight response, where we want to get away or we want to fight. And there's a hierarchy. If something is threatening, we want to usually get away from it. We want to pull away from it. If we can't pull away and we feel we have a chance, and it's not a cognitive feeling, it's a perception of the nervous system, we can fight whatever it is, we can speak up, we can physically fight. Then we go into fight response. This is where aggression comes in, or boundary, or saying no. If that's overwhelmed or not possible, then we go into the more ancient system of our nervous system, which is the dorsal vagal shutdown. And dorsal vagal shutdown basically overrides the fight flight responses and makes us go into numbness or dissociation. There's another aspect of the dorsal vagal, which is the rest and digest. And I didn't put it down here because I'm going to talking about more. But we also have this capacity to be very chill. And this is when you do your meditation practice, your mindfulness practice, you're engaging into the dorsal vagal part of your rest and digestive part of your nervous system. So when you felt the back body practice, you were chill, relaxed, fluid, calm. You were also in the dorsal vagal, okay? But if the dorsal vagal is now too still and you have unprocessed trauma, and something doesn't feel quite right, or something interoceptive from your body gets triggered, a memory, a sensation, an olfactory response, a touch response, a tactile response, you name it, the dorsal vagal, quiet, calm, cool, collective state can turn into a dorsal vagal freeze immobility response. And this is one of the things I have seen many times with meditators. Meditation, and I'm going to come out for just 1 second here, because it looks like there's a question too. But think about it. We're in these beautiful meditation experiences, usually beautiful places with wonderful people. When somebody, a trauma survivor, yearns often for those kind of environments, right? Because it's a very controlled environment. You're not allowed to wear fragrances. There's certain protocols. Nobody's supposed to talk. People are supposed to be nice. It's a wonderful, for trauma survivors, this is like the ideal condition. Fabulous. People are not supposed to be mean, right? So everything is, the outside world is controlled. Fabulous. Now I'm sitting down, and then all hell breaks loose because my interoceptive, unprocessed trauma is now speaking very loudly. So what has felt very calming and relaxing, and Herbert Benson 30 years ago called it the relaxation point, it can literally turn. Calm, cool, collected, and then suddenly I'm in a freeze response. and it looks on the outside like meditation. And as the teacher, you go, oh my God, my students are great. They're so deeply in their meditation. Meanwhile, they're dissociating and they're freezing and they're experiencing their trauma, right? So it can happen like that. And it's not their fault. It's nothing that you did wrong. It's part of unprocessed trauma that hasn't been realized. So it can get triggered in literally in meditation. So let me pause. That was probably pretty provocative. There's a couple of questions. Lisa, you want to say something?
Hi, thank you. I just wondered what, sorry, this is back a little bit, what the down versus up activation meant. I wasn't sure what
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, great. Thank you. So upregulation means the sympathetic activation of your nervous system. So when you're mobilizing into fight or flight, that's upregulating. That's energy. So you use throughout the day, we all go through a sympathetic charge, like you have your morning coffee and you're ready to roll. That's sympathetic nervous system of activation. So that's a good kind of activation, right? So we use it to get things done. When we're down regulating and we're like, oh, no, I'm tired. This was a lot of work. I need to lie on my couch, and oh, I'm doing like a meditation. Now we're using the down regulating, the rest and the digestion of our nervous system to calm down. A resilient nervous system goes through sympathetic activation, parasympathetic resting and digesting, sympathetic activation, parasympathetic rest and digestion. That's what resiliency is. That's what resilience is. So the capacity to be with activation, mobilization, and then also digesting it. Where trauma comes into play is that we get upregulated and we stay upregulated and we can't metabolize what's happening, or we crash and we go into the immobility response. So we go from high states of fighting or fleeing into immobilization and shutting down. So we don't go into this nice social engagement, safe, collected, oh, I've got myself nicely resourced in my parents. I don't go into that, but I'm going from highly upregulated into highly downregulated. So downregulated just means that we're going into the parasympathetic. Upregulated means we're going into the sympathetic. And so it's a seesaw in a way. That's what our nervous system is designed to do. And in trauma, these responses get stuck. And
thank
that's what,
you.
and then they get triggered. Yeah. Thanks for that clarification. Michael, do you want to unmute yourself?
Okay. Hi, Manuela. Thank you. I'm really getting a lot out of this. Um, but a question occurred to me while you were talking about the trauma sensitive approach. If you notice, for example, that somebody in a class is shutting down, or they're exhibiting some kind of traumatic response to a meditation or whatever it is that you're doing, that you might pause and ask them, so what's your experience? What's going on for you right now? I can't remember the exact words that you used, but it was something along those lines. And I could imagine that there might be situations where that also would be kind of traumatizing for somebody
You bet.
because
You
it's
bet.
like, oh, I'm here, like I'm in freeze mode and I'm trying to hide. I don't want to be seen. And somebody is stopping the class to ask me how I am. It's freaking me out even more.
You
And
got
so I
it.
was wondering if that comes up for you and
Absolutely. Absolutely. You
and
got it.
how do you notice it and what do you do about it?
Yeah, that's great. You're kind of previewing a little bit, but that's a very common experience. So absolutely. Shame is very coupled often with trauma responses. That's also how trauma gets stuck and stays sustained. So obviously in a group context, if you're noticing one of your students going into trauma response, it's the worst thing to point them out, right? Hey, let me stop the class. Susie, I'm noticing, it's like, they're going to
Right.
be running out of the room or get more frozen and drown in shame. No, that would be not the right response. But you notice it. So you can change your teaching right there. You can bring in choice. So notice what's coming up for you, and perhaps you need to move your body a little bit. I just said that we wanted to be very still, but perhaps stillness also includes a little bit of movement. That's a gentle upregulating. I'm
Mhm.
talking to Susie, but I'm not talking directly to Susie. I'm talking to the class, right? And
Right.
somebody who's just like, no, I'm sitting here like a mountain still, nothing is moving. This is my jam right now. They won't even notice that instruction. But the person, you just threw them a lifeline,
Mhm.
right? So they will take it perhaps, or at least you're giving them permission for it. And you can even say, so this is where reading the body of your students is very important. So if you're seeing somebody kind of frozen or they're exhibiting, some of those indicators, then you start including it into your instruction. So you're talking to them, but not directly addressing them.
Okay. So that was what you meant when you were saying that? That was like an instruction to the class, not to an individual.
Well, it depends. If I have an individual in front of me and it's a one-on-one mentor moment, I might say, so I'm noticing something here. What's happening for you? And would you like to describe? Would you like to share that with me? Would that be okay? You're asking for consent, right? Choice, choice, choice. So you would bring that up in a one-on-one because it's private. But in front of a group, I would not out anybody.
Yeah, that really makes sense to me. And so even in a one-on-one situation, if somebody seems like they're really uncomfortable, like it looks like they feel like they're being put on the spot to like
Mhm,
explain their experience to you,
mhm. Yeah,
what would you
great
do?
one. Yeah, a couple of choices. So if you're noticing that, again, the tendency is to clamp down on instruction or hone in even more on them. You need to take the focus off them, right? So you might either say, oh, I'm noticing I need a little break, or you know what, I'm going to get myself a little water. Would you like one too? You put in a little break somehow, and you
Hmm.
take it on you. Right? You make you the focus because
Yeah.
if somebody feels like they're the focus and they're getting more frozen, oh my God, I hope the spotlight goes away from me. Take the focus away onto you. And you can say, this reminds me of a story. I had an experience once. So you go to you. So this is where teaching stories can come in, right? Or little Dharma stories that are very, very helpful, that you basically taking the focus away. It's basically interrupting the intensity of this activation in that moment. And that's a resource.
Hmm.
Another way you can say, so I'm noticing there's some things happening. Would it be helpful if we did something resourcing together? I'm noticing too, I'm not quite in my seat here right now. I could use it too. So it's the co-regulation as we use it in our language. It's like we're co-regulating and we're doing it together. I'm noticing I'm a little bit under the weather today and I could use a few moments of breathing. Would that be helpful? I need it. So again, you see, it's like it's very kind of including you. We're doing it together, not on you. You're not the patient that I'm focusing on, right?
Right. Yeah.
How does that land?
That's great. That helps a lot. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
yeah, good. Those are great questions. Okay. Well,
Manuela,
we
we
hear,
have,
yeah.
this is Mackie. We have one question in the chat that I think would make sense to answer here. So, what are the most common signs of trauma responses to watch out for as a mindfulness mentor? The ones where giving them a choice is appropriate response of the mentor.
So I'm gonna talk about that in a minute. Can you hold your fire for a second? Okay,
Perfect.
great. I got so many slides for you. So let's see. All right, I'm going to go through this briefly. You'll have this, so you can study this some more. But here are some different, the domains I just went through, the reception, the ventral vagal, the sympathetic, the dorsal vagal. All this I wrote down. And then I wrote down some of the mindfulness function and somatic practice function. So, and then also what impact it has on the regulation of the nervous system. So I won't go through all of them, but you have it as a little map and what you can do. But I'm gonna highlight a couple of them. So if you look at, for example, um, the let's see, you just talked about the dorsal vagal. Look at the dorsal vagal, 1, 2, 3, 4. The fourth line there, dorsal vagal, shutdown and collapse. So when you want to do in that moment, you do a gentle activation. So what I just said to Michael, how about we do a very gentle movement in the body? And I'm a big fan, I'm trained in continuum, so I use a lot of continuum movement, which is super intrinsic and gentle to bring to mindfulness states because it gives people a choice. So how about doing a gentle swaying motion, or a very little movement at the top of your crown brings a little movement at the back of your neck, or gently kind of let your your feet, you can do it with me. Curl your feet under and then release them very gently. Curl them and release them. So I'm just mirroring it in my hands. But little movements with the fingertips or the hands, little motions, bring them. And as you do that, and this would be something I would actually literally say, as you do that, notice how your body responds. What happens in any kind of activation, mobilization or immobilization, the body is responding before the mind can even figure out what's happening. Some trigger is happening. And often meditation containers can be triggering. As I said, there can be rigidity or interoceptive cues are coming up, right? Or memories or feelings come up that suddenly feel very overwhelming. And you don't, the student often says, like, I don't know what's really happening, but it's all very intense. And then he says, so if you can just focus on kind of curling your toes under and then letting them go, and then curling them under and letting them go, or do a motion side to side very gently, yeah. Or put a hand on your chest and the other one on your belly, and just do a very gentle pressure into the chest and then the belly. That's called a bilateral stimulation. These are all little micro movements. You're going to practice that too with each other that begin to engage the body's intelligence. As soon as you bring movement to an immobilized state, you're already moving the client or the student out. Okay? What people often do, they immobilize and then they're holding and they're bracing and they're cutting off the breath and then they're spacing out and they're kind of miserable and then they're holding even more and it's all getting tighter and tighter. Yeah. You want to avoid that. That's actually a path towards what we call re-traumatization. So bringing a little bit of movement of breath. Yeah, the breath is the principal dancer in the body. Yeah, it's the great dancer in the body. And you know that with attention, you can move breath. So you can say even things like, let the breath move around the body. Let it help you. Maybe there's an internal breathing movement that you can initiate. Or where does the breath want to move now? So things like that. So movement is the key with any kind of immobilization. And that's what's called the gentle upregulation. So when somebody shuts down like that, the gentle movement that the person can do is very helpful. This is where, of course, when you're teaching mindfulness, you're bringing gentle yoga practices or Tai Chi practices or somatic movements are super helpful as a vocabulary to teach this nervous system there are other ways to be with the body and the inner states than just being still. Yeah, because the still, and especially anything that's outer and forced, can feel like I'm getting re-triggered into a freeze response. It feels just like that. The body is reminded of like, oh my God, this is just how it felt back then. This is what I've seen a lot with trauma clients. Yeah. So here is an image. It's called the polyvagal ladder. The terminology polyvagal ladder comes from Deb Dana, who's also a trauma teacher, beautiful teacher who does polyvagal work. This is not her map per se, but she uses that word. But there is when we're working on the ventral vagal, sympathetic, dorsal vagal, or parasympathetic, it's like a ladder. We're moving up and down our nervous system. As I said earlier, sympathetic, parasympathetic creates resiliency. In trauma, the client often moves from mobilization, high states of anxiety or rage or wanting to get away or wanting to fight or internally wanting to, push away, be aversive. That can go to totally shutting down very quickly, right? And there's always the need for the ventral vagal. So the ventral vagal is where we actually what's called the window of tolerance, where we can be with our experience. That's where we want our clients to be. When we're in that more calm, fluid state, we can actually look at our sympathetic and our parasympathetic responses. Yeah, we can't, when we're in it, it's very difficult. We actually need to move out of it. So this is why bringing gentle movement, or when somebody is in a very activated sympathetic state, saying, so you know what, there's a lot of energy moving through your body. Maybe there's a motion that you would like to do. And some people like, oh, they want to shake, or they want to do a little bit of that, or they want to shiver in their spine. That's a sympathetic discharge release. So think about it. I'm going to come out again. In the wilderness, when you're under threat, when animals trying to attack you, and you want to run away. Maybe you're running away, or maybe you're fighting them and you're running away, right? And you finally got away from this animal, or maybe you put them down to the ground and you won. You have mobilized a lot of cortisol, norepinephrine, all kinds of biochemistry in your body to overcome this incredible threat. Yeah, you were going into mobilization of your body. Your heart rate is going fast. Your breath is going fast. The threat is over. And when safety returns, what do we usually do? We go, and then slowly we're settling down, right? And then the parasympathetic comes, and we take a breath, and then we're digesting, and then we go, you know what just happened? I was wrestling this giant panda bear. It looked menacing, you know? I swear it was. So then you tell the story, then it becomes like, something that you overcame. And what your body is doing, it's basically processing what happened and it's metabolizing it and it's beginning to digest and then rest. Oh, now I'm tired. I mobilized so much and now I'm tired. I need to rest. So this is a mammalian trait. Every mammal in the wilderness does that. So if you go to Africa, many animals lunch pretty much daily, and they have to go through this routine every single time, every single day. They're getting chased by a lion. The lion didn't get them. They had to mobilize. Now they're in safety. What do they now do? They shiver, they shimmy, they shake, they make sounds. What do humans do? We cry, we vocalize, we shiver, we have a little cold, right? And that's called a discharge. So the nervous system recalibrates. And that's great. This is actually nervous system health. What happens, because we have this wonderful prefrontal cortex, we just went through something scary. Now we're going somewhere and somebody says, what's the big fuss? Why are you making such a big fuss? Right? A panda bear? They're not dangerous. What are you talking about? Now you feel shame, or you're being outed, or there's a norm where it's not okay. And suddenly you were shutting down the discharge. So what actually wanted to process through is now being truncated. It's being cut off. And this is really another definition of trauma. It gets stuck somatically in the body. Then the doctor says, mindfulness meditation is really good. Let's put you into a retreat. They go there and they go like, oh my God, here comes the panda bear. The panda bear is here, right? And then I'm having that experience again. But all these nice, calm, cool, collected people, they all look great and serene, and I can't have this response. I'm going to shut it down again. So that's what I mean, right? So these responses that I actually want to metabolize through are not allowed through because we either inhibit it or other systemic forces are coming to inhibit it. We don't feel safe to feel that through. Does that help to kind of give you a frame for that? Yeah. So this is really what we're encountering, right? So the person does something, goes into the meditation, and then they're sitting there, and then all this unprocessed trauma is actually coming up. But if they're not allowed to shimmy or cry or move or breathe or vocalize or maybe lie down or do to help the body move through it, it's going to be very difficult. They're going to have a difficult experience. So this is why mindfulness and trauma sometimes go at odds. So having movement, having also a trauma-sensitive lens, bringing in language, we say, see if your body needs to move just a little bit. If you're noticing it's getting really heavy or you see somebody freezing, those little micro movements can be golden. Yeah, not everybody needs to do a big shimmy and shiver or crying. Often it's just the permission to have this feeling and just feeling, oh, a little like that, right? And allowing that through. And that's nervous system health. Okay, I think I just blew my talk here because I'm completely somewhere else. Let's see. So let me give you a couple more slides. So trauma shapes also our awareness and attention, and you know how important that is with mindfulness, right? So it impacts and it hijacks also our attention. So what trauma does in a moment of trauma, here's this menacing panda bear. I swear it was menacing. It was coming towards me and my survival was at stake. What's going to happen with my attention? I'm going to zero in on the threat 100% because my survival depends on it. Yeah. So for survival, it's really important that my attention is there because I need to make sure I'll survive. After the threat is gone, as I said, I have discharged it. I go on my normal neurotic life, all good. If trauma gets stuck in the body, guess what happens with my attention? It keeps being hijacked, keeps being hijacked, right? So my attention actually can't diversify, it can't open because I'm constantly needing to watch out. And this is where hypervigilance comes in. So here's another coupling. Mindfulness, awareness, you're very aware, you're paying attention to every breath, every sound, every little sensation, right? And now you are engaging, from a trauma perspective, vigilance. If somebody is stuck in hypervigilance, get what's going to happen. They're going to get hypervigilance. They're going to notice that that person in the third row is breathing heavily, and that might be menacing. Or they're noticing that the exits are closed and they're getting claustrophobic, or da 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 da. And now the hypervigilance is turning into a mobilization response. So again, well-meaning, like let's become very aware, can turn into this vigilance because the attention needs to shift to protection and control, right? So that's how I keep myself safe. And so if I'm not feeling internally safe, I'm going to be always spending some energy being vigilant to what's going out in the outside world and trying to control it. And so our somatic awareness becomes hyper-focused. And then we also, can we stay focused 24/7? No, we can't. So we go from very hyper-vigilant to shutting down and dissociated. And so what we call the trauma roller coaster, very, very sympathetically charged. And then I have to shut down and dissociate and get numb. And then I don't feel anything, right? And then you have the opposite where somebody says, I don't know, nothing is happening in my meditation. It feels all kind of blah, nothing is there. And so what just happened is they were actually half an hour earlier very mobilized, and then they were shutting down into the parasympathetic dorsal vagal shutdown. Okay. So what I mentioned this already. Let me go here. So another one I want to just point out, and we're not going to spend a lot of time in, is the fawning response. We talk about fight, flight, and freeze. Those are the classic ones, but there are more. There's also something is called the fawning response that are relationally trauma-based. So trauma survivors often respond to authority with appeasement and compliance to maintain relational safety. Okay, this is also, and again, this will be a whole other topic, but this is why you often have a high correlation, and this is not just in Buddhist centers, in all kinds of organized, hierarchical, religious, that is rife for it, the Catholic Church, you name it, but anybody who assumes an authority and we feel dependent on that authority and we have trauma, relational trauma, we want to appease and comply with that person. So it also, of course, attracts trauma survivors coming into those environments. So just FYI, this is a big topic, but I just want to put that into your thinking cap, right? And so the student might override any kind of body signals of like, oh, this doesn't feel good, or the teacher is very controlling, or I don't like these instructions. I don't want to say no because here's this wise teacher. I don't want to say anything against them. And so they get into this internal stress where their body says, no, I don't want to do this. But because I want to be part of this Sangha or this teacher, I can't really say no. So they're overriding, once again, their body intelligence, their inner no. Yeah. So this is a big topic, it's a big issue. So trauma sensitivity, again, choice, right? Things like, notice if this feels right to you. As I give you this instruction, notice if there's an inner no. Even simple things like that. It cues to the student, you know what, it's okay for you to disagree with me. It's okay for you to feel the no. That's what it signals, yeah? But to say like, so here is my instruction, and see if that feels right to you. Consent and choice. And so you build it in as a somatic awareness. You build it in by saying, notice how that lands for you. Maybe there's a part of you that doesn't like this instruction. Maybe a part of you says, no. And so notice that. Let that be here too. Yeah. So you're normalizing the no, you're making room for the no. In fact, you're empowering the person for the no, because then maybe they come up and say, you know what, that meditation, that didn't land, I didn't like it. I felt very triggered, and say, wow, tell me more about that. That's very interesting. I want to know about your experience, right? And then they go, oh, I thought I had to do it this way. No, there's so many different ways to do mindfulness. Tell me about yours, right? And then the client will go, student will go, oh, wow, I thought I had to do exactly those steps. It's like, they're guidelines, but what's your experience? So as soon as you go to that kind of languaging, usually people relax and go, oh, there's a room for me. The internalized beliefs of students are often like, they have trauma, I'm wrong, something, I'm bad, I'm doing it bad, I'm a messed up human. Those are all internalized beliefs. Huh? And now I'm having a big fat no somatically while I'm having this wonderful teacher that's telling me something lovely, but I have a no that puts me in an incredible bind. Yeah. Does that land for you all? Yeah, rich terrain, right? We could spend another 2 hours just on that. I know. Okay. Mackie, where am I with time? How much time do I have left? I need a couple more things for our
Yeah, we
space.
have, yeah, Manuela, if you want to speak for a while, and then we can shorten the breakout rooms to about 30 minutes, if that's
Okay,
okay,
great.
just to
So
leave
how
some
much time
time.
do I have left?
We're definitely over on time, so maybe just
Over. Okay.
a
Then
few
I need to
minutes.
go. Okay, so I need to cover a couple more slides.
Okay.
So as I said, and this is the teacher in me, I like to prepare and give you as much as I can. And so you have the slides, you can read them, so geek out on them. But here are a couple of things you probably want to know. As I already stressed, choice-based attention, invite the touch and go attention. Touch a little bit into it and then let it go. Touch and go is a concept out of Buddhist meditation, and you can use it. If you don't want to focus on something so intensely, just focus for a moment and then let it go. Give them permission to shift attention. One of the things with trauma survivors is hijacking their attention and making them, right, can be a trigger. So if you're saying, you know what, if your attention wanders a little bit and it feels actually nourishing in this moment, let that happen and study the effect of that. And actually, when you gave me that instruction, I took a breath and my belly relaxed and I felt safe. Great. So you found a gateway into your practice just now. Wonderful. That doesn't mean we're saying now forever practice this way. You're helping the client to become trauma sensitive to their own experience. That's what you're doing, right? You're not altering meditation practices or instructions forever. You're just helping them over those activations, giving them permission to find somatic anchors. External anchors, very important. If the interior is too activating, take a moment, open your eyes, because for some people, closing their eyes is the worst. They need to do open eyes. For some, having the eyes open is the worst. So again, make a choice. For you, open eyes, great. But if they're getting activated, anchor yourself on the exterior. Look at something that feels neutral or pleasurable. Look around the room. It's called the orienting response. So orienting literally involves moving the eyes, the head, and a little bit the body. Look around the room, see what you find pleasing or neutral. Don't say safe. Safe is a trigger word. Say neutral or pleasing. Okay? Neutral is great. If they're going like, this is a neutral space, it's okay. That's good. What you're watching for is this. And now you know the activation has down-regulated. That's what you're looking for. You don't even have to say more. Okay? That's what you're looking for. You're looking for the person kind of releasing that valve. And when you're doing that movement, this is called the orienting response. The orienting response, that turn of the head, activates the polyvagal nerve, one of the biggest nerve systems in the body, and it signals safety is here. Because what do we do when we're feeling unsafe? We're looking around. Where's it coming from? Where's it going? Yeah. Oh, no, nothing wrong, no danger. Okay. Looking around, orienting signals to the body, all okay. All right. Or they're going, oh, I don't like that door. Okay. Do you want me to close that door for you? Yes, that would be great. Or can we leave the door open because I want to run out of it in their minds? Sure, we can have it ajar. Yeah. Choice. I can meditate with the door open here. Great. I can have an exit strategy. So those tiny little adjustments, you don't even have to talk about trauma or anything, just making those small adjustments I don't like being in the front of the room. I don't like being in the back of the room. Where would you like to sit? What's a good space for you? Well, I like to be on the side by the door. Great, let's make a space for you there. Right? That's what you're looking for. Rather than, nope, that's your assigned seat. You're going to be here. Okay, I'm going to get through it. Okay. So titrating, bite-sizing, 30, 90 seconds, have them orient. Take a moment, feel the concentration, let go, look around the room, then come back. That's titration. Bringing in resources, okay? Any kind of resources. Get creative. Eyes open, as I said, and then language shifts. Yeah, replace, stay with it with notice what's okay to notice rather than stay with it. A lot of traditional instructions of meditation said stay with it, go through the fire, meet the discomfort. That's great for somebody who's not trauma dysregulated. But if somebody's trauma dysregulated, that is the wrong instruction, literally. They will go, oh my God, I have to stay with it, right? But if you say, so notice what's okay to notice, and they might go, well, it's okay to notice that I don't like it, right? Or I'm noticing my no. Great. And if you notice a no inside or let that be here too. So normalize the experiences, okay? And then obviously, if you want to, when you're doing anything with students, you want to screen a little bit. Do they have a trauma history? Are they willing to disclose some of it? They don't have to give you all the details. But if you have any kind of trauma experience, would you be willing to share what some of your experiences and what you need? How can I make it more safe and resourceful for you, this experience? So even that kind of attuning to it is hugely helpful for people. Okay. And then even normalizing, say, sometimes when we have trauma, and if you want to use yourself, sometimes we can have some responses that we didn't anticipate. Sometimes a meditation doesn't feel good or we feel a little triggered. And you know what? That's part of it. And we can learn how to work with it. So also hugely important, ground yourself as a mentor, as I said, right? Use the trauma sensitive language and pacing. Offer choice and empowerment. And then use somatic grounding techniques. Anything that references the body that's neutral or pleasurable or pleasant. Yeah. And that can be very individual. For some people, it's leaning against something, feeling the ground. Some people love regulation techniques of visualizing the earth underneath them. Other people go like, the earth is very menacing. I don't want that because I'm used to earthquakes or whatever. You have to find out what's the resource for you. What's an anchor for you? What's your anchor? Tell me about it, right? And if you feel like you're getting dysregulated, then use that anchor. Total permission to have that. And then come back, touch and go. So use your anchor and then come back. Okay, let me pause here. There's more, but any kind of questions? How is this landing? How is your nervous system? Are you breathing with me? Are you breathing? Yes, no? You're holding your breath. If you are, move. Was there a digital hand? Amanda, please.
Hi. I was just wondering if there's any kind of distinct differences for those of us who work with children and youth as opposed to adults. Um,
Well, it's the same nervous system. So you're seeing often what you see with children a much more direct experience because they're better at not hiding it actually. They're more direct. So you see it. You see mobilization or immobilization very quickly. You see darting eyes, you see perhaps the skin getting flushed or getting sweaty or getting very pale. You see that usually children are much more upfront with it. So you see those, but you see all that. And obviously the engagement is more playful, hey, but how about we play? So you might use a ball or you might use tools or ropes or something like that. So you bring a little bit of movement to the body because movement is the great metabolizer. Okay, when you use movement, and then if you're moving a little bit and then they're going, and then you go, let us do that together. Let's make a sound together. Now you have processed and metabolized whatever that stressor was in the body in a playful way without having to talk about it. So with children play, depending on the age, obviously with a teenager, they're like, what? But with young children, play is the way to do it, But activity of the body is the way to move trauma through.
and with adolescents then? What would you recommend for
All of these are age appropriate, right? So you have to work with whatever age group what they can relate to. So any also activity, usually youth might like also movement that's maybe but maybe they like to do yoga, or they like to dance, or they like to, whatever. So kind of any kind of places with music that they like, obviously, not you, so things that meets them, that's kind of important.
Thank
Yeah.
you so
And
much.
then after mobilization, if you've done some movement, say, so let's just take a moment and just feel ourselves. Let's all lie on the floor and just feel how our body naturally settles. That's actually naturally arriving into the natural state, because that's what the body does. It's who we are. When we're not preoccupied with anything and also not trauma, we actually arrive in the natural state. So that's a beautiful teaching. When you have moved and played, and it goes, oh, let's all lie on the floor and feel the earth supporting you. And then just call out how you're feeling. I feel peaceful. I feel sweet. I feel, and then there you are. There you go. You've just taught the mindfulness of body.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
you're welcome. I used to teach children beginning of my career. Karen.
Hi, thank you. This is all fascinating. Whoops. This is all fascinating. Thank you. So I had an experience recently with myself. We were in Mexico City, and in the middle of the night, my husband came out of the bathroom and was just like, "Oh, I'm so sick. I'm so sick," and looked like he was going to die. He just like plopped on the bed, couldn't take medicine, did take medicine, but was maybe a little dramatic. Anyway, as I tried to settle myself and get back to sleep, I guess I was going through hypervigilance, but my mind, I just started thinking like, I don't even know, what if he's really, really sick? What if we have to go to the ER? I don't know where the ER is. Is there going to be somebody at the desk? All this stuff. And my body, I started feeling very, very cold and shaky. So I'm almost wondering, I think it was like a mini panic attack. And I recognized what is going on here. So I got up and I put on a coat and I lay down and socks to warm myself up. And I just went into slow breathing. I'm a meditation teacher. I went
Good.
to slow breathing and totally re-regulated myself. So was that just hypervigilance and
It was a sympathetic charge. You were mobilizing. So there was danger.
okay.
You are mobilizing in an appropriate way, and also going over that kind of thinking and is checking all the boxes is very appropriate. This could be a threatening situation. So
Yeah.
we're using your sympathetic charge. This is a flight and fight activity. Should I do this? Should we do this? That's
Right.
fight, flight. So you were actually appropriately doing that. The danger was over.
Okay.
And then your body was discharging. And so temperature fluctuations, sometimes also people start crying. They're going like, why am I crying? So those are all discharges because the danger is over, everything is okay. And then the body needs to release all that mobilization. That's what you were doing. And then you did the right thing. You were just helping your body along, letting it recalibrate, bringing it into the parasympathetic, and then voila. Now you
Ah,
have a story to tell.
yeah, exactly. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for all
Yeah,
the
you're welcome.
wisdom.
Yeah. Elizabeth, you're muted. You're muted, dear. Could you unmute? There.
Thank you.
Great.
So I just wondered if you had any comments about something that happened at the beginning when we were doing our meditation. Um, as we were meditating, I had several names, mainly of ancestors, start twirling through my middle fluid space. In wood. And as they did that, they twirled in wood all the way through. And then they stopped at my feet. And then they went back up at my heart space and grew the top of the tree. And then there were several different animals that appeared appropriately through different spots of the trees. and it was a big, giant, old, beautiful bodark tree. I know bodark trees aren't found all over the world, but they can be very beautiful when they get very large, and it's very appropriate for the happening. So it was very beautiful for me, and I did say thank you, but I was just curious if you had any comments or insight.
Did you enjoy the experience?
I did.
I don't think I have a comment, and that sounds like quite a gift. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Okay, last one, Ashley, and then we need to move on.
Hi, I wanted
Hey.
to ask because there was two times when I was giving a guided sit, and then I actually noticed there was one or two students that actually like were shifting in their seated position. And it seems like they have, I noticed when I'm facilitating that one student was shifting, making some sound, and because it looks uncomfortable, that's why it causes someone else in the group to also shift and be uncomfortable with the guidance. So when I notice that as I facilitate, what are some words or ways you would like kind of like, oh, it's okay if you're shifting, but of course I wouldn't call that out because I'm following a guided script and I'm also guiding myself and practicing as I guide the group. In such instances, how would you kind of also include that, like, okay, I notice this is shifting and B is shifting. Yeah, you know.
So there's the script and then there's the class, right?
Yes.
So you
Yes.
start with a script and then you throw the script away when you see what's happening in the class. So if your students are shifting, something is either activating or not landing, right? And then you need to kind of alter your instruction in that moment and go like, so notice what's happening. If there's some small adjustments that are happening, see if you can include that. And then notice if something gets a little unsettled and then see how you can come back to settling yourself. So you include what it's like it's almost like this is of course with more, are you new to being a meditation instructor?
Have been practicing for a few years.
You're new to it? Okay. So this is completely normal. Yeah. So over time, you will learn that you start with your instructions and then the instructions only go so far into how does it become a lived experience in the students. So this is when we begin to track, like, how do my instructions arrive? And if I'm seeing that happening, then I say, so notice your body maybe wants to do tiny little shifts and go ahead and let that happen, touch and go, let that happen. And then see if you can also settle yourself. What needs to happen for you to settle? Let's see what breath you can use. Remember whatever instruction you gave. Then you repeat a little instruction. Then you're noticing the room settling, right? Then you let them be with that. And then you do something else. You go like, and just see what's the next. So you're weaving in. So they're becoming life instructions. So the script is just a start. It's just to get you going. And then you have to really begin to read the room. And this is where you have to have a little bit of courage as a teacher to include that. Yeah, that's okay. But that's how you learn. That's how you learn, is to begin to include what's actually happening live in front of me, you know? So you don't comment on the people, you don't pull anybody out, but you include it as a general instruction, as a choice. So notice if this needs to happen or that needs to happen. You give always a little bit of a menu. And then for the people who doesn't matter, it'll be like this. For the people that go, oh, thank God, she's allowing me to shift my body a little bit, right? And then you kind of settle the room again, because any of these, if you've done long retreats, there's a rhythm to meditation practice, right? And sometimes a group gets into a groove and everybody goes, right? You probably have been there, right? And then sometimes you notice the group goes like this, and without even speaking a word, the group activates also each other energetically. So if you've been on long retreats, you know that happens. We go through cycles, right? And if somebody suffers in that corner, then the whole group starts suffering. So there's also a group feel that begins to happen. So as a skilled teacher, you begin to read those movements, and you can see them in the nervous system. Yeah. So often it is some obstacle, some pain that somebody goes through. And the more we open our hearts, the more we suffer along with our meditating friends, right? Okay, let's go into some practice. We're gonna make it shorter. And Mackie, I let you do the math because you have probably more how much we'd have. But here are the basic instructions. What I'd like you to do is to, you're going to be in threes or fours, Mackie. What are we going to do?
Let's do groups of three, Manuela, and if really, let's just have two people do it. So one person's just
Yes,
really going to observe in the group
that
because
sounds great. So
we'll be in
two people,
breakout,
yeah,
yeah,
that sounds
breakout rooms
great.
for about 10 minutes or so, 15.
Sounds good. And so you'll have this script for a later time if you want to practice with each other, if you want to do it again. But what I'd like you to do is very simply ask your partner here to take it as the mentor. You're guiding them into a moment of mindfulness. And then having them notice anything that's a tiny bit activating, okay? Don't do a big trauma right now, but just like a little unsettledness, or even the talk Manuela gave just reminded me, yeah? And then you have, then you basically ask them to find a place of just an ease or neutrality. And then you invite them to do a micro pendulation, just a micro little movement. See if you can bring a little movement to this, or use the breath as movement, or physically shift your body. And then notice what's happening to this activation. So a mini little experiment you're doing. Okay? You're using a moment of activation, having the person focus on something that's resourcing, and then having them shift a little bit between what's activating and what's resourcing, just a tiny bit, touch and go. And then notice what comes out of that. Okay, what has shifted? That's what you're looking for, that moment of shift when something has regulated. So very simple, a little mini skill. Sounds good? The script, you don't have to read it right now. This is just a background if you want it, but these are the steps.
Wonderful. Thanks, Manuela. So there's a handout in the chat. Feel free to just do that, download it, and then we'll be in breakout rooms for about 14 minutes or so. So there'll be three people in a room. One person can just be observing, and we'll go through two people. And at the midpoint, when you should switch, I'll broadcast a message to the group. So with that, I'll go ahead and open the rooms and see you back here in a little less than 14 minutes. Okay, Manuela, the group is coming back into the main
We are
room.
back. Okay, so how did that go? Put it in the chat. How was that? To get a little taste of working with a micropendulation. Did you feel a shift? Anybody want to come on? No? No? Nobody wants to talk? Okay, helpful, practical, okay. You found out your way. Yeah. The basic gist of it is that when something is activated, that you offer a resource, right? And then you can basically pendulate there by saying, bring a little bit of a movement, use your breath here. So you're bringing a somatic resource to that moment of activation. And then you have the person go back to the activation. And as you do that, then usually is a shift that happens. So you're creating a state shift. And that allows the idea of any kind of trauma informed. No, I can't do a demo now, we're out of time, but if we had more time, we would. But the idea is that you can shift somebody out of a state pretty quickly, and that often allows the person then to come back into a mindfulness state. That's the whole point, right? So you're not there to do therapy. That's not the scope. That's not the contract that you have with them, unless you're a mental health professional and have that contract with them. That's not what you usually are there for. So what you want to do is just help the person over that activated moment so that they can come back to whatever you're wanting them to do, or whatever the task is. So that's the whole point. So usually bringing a resource, an embodiment, a movement to that moment of activation will help the client or the student to shift away from it and then reconnect them with a deeper resource. That's the whole point. So put that in your back pocket. And if we had more time, I would do a full demo, but I can't. So yeah, and you have the script, and I'm also sending you the talk, and I will also send you the back body practice too. So you got quite a few goodies here that you can dig into and read. Stephen.
Um, so I accidentally took myself out of the room at the end of the thing, so we didn't get a chance to debrief at all. But I had just a really interesting, wonderful experience, wonderfully guided by Marcia, and noticed a couple of interesting things that how bringing my how as I was bringing my breath to it, part of the guidance was to like breathe into it and breathe some of the pain that I was having out. And I felt resistance to breathing the pain out. But what I could do was to breathe out resistance.
Great.
And
Fabulous.
so that was really interesting in how that changed the experience. And then there was also, I'll just share this one last thing. I mean, there's a dozen things I could share, but there was the point of like bringing the awareness and the breath there, and then bringing the awareness to the fingertips and having a little movement in the fingertips. And then I don't know if she guided it or if it was just kind of something that came to me, but it was like the fingertips were within the pain and the movement was moving the pain. So it was really interesting that it took the awareness away from the pain to the fingertips and the little micro movements, and then somehow the movements were somehow sort of like untangling. So
Beautiful. That's
anyway,
exactly
thank you.
it. That's a great word, untangling. So
Mhm.
that's it. You got it. That's it. Yeah. So
Did get it.
it sounds kind of, thank you for sharing that, Stephen. It
Mm.
sounds simple, but really that little bit of a micro shift,
Mm.
makes such a difference. And if somebody's already in a meditative state and you're just offering this little bit, it has a profound impact.
And that's, as you're saying that, the one last thing is that when I developed a micro agenda of getting rid of the pain, all of a sudden the pain got worse. But when I could stay with noticing little change, then all of a sudden then everything eased. And so it was just as you were just saying, just exactly that, staying with noticing the little movements. So thank you.
Exactly. Beautiful. Thank you. Well, I hope that I know we only had 2 hours, so I know I put a lot in here, but you have some of the resources. I hope that sparked some of your curiosity and your thirst to learn more. Trauma is a big field. There's a lot to learn. Um, Mackie's going to put also, I like the hearts. Thank you, everyone. If you want to see what I do, she's going to put a couple of links in of what I do, and you can find my work there. I've also, muchas gracias. Perfecto. Um, yeah, you can find what I do, but I really appreciate that I could talk to you today. I wish you all the best and that you integrate this learning. This is a lifelong learning, obviously. When you're on the path of mindfulness, it's never ending, and may your path be full of wonder and curiosity. And remember that trauma experiences are human experiences and that we are equipped to work with them. So it's just a way of finding creative and gentle and kind ways to work with it. That's really the gist of it. It's it's not over there, but it's actually something that we have in our nervous system when we're working with the body, our nervous system that we can actually work with. So hopefully that is a hopeful message for you. Yeah. So thank you, and thanks for having me at this course at the very end of your whole journey. I wish you much fruition.